Welcome to another edition of the Show Me Hoops podcast. I'm David Heed. We're the number one podcast for basketball coaches in the state of Missouri. And today I am joined by my special guest coming to us from the St. Louis area, Adam Pappas. He is the director of Platinum Basketball and Platinum Coaching. And so, Adam, we appreciate you joining the podcast.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
Yeah, and so for our listeners, we're statewide. We've got people that keep up with this podcast all over the state of Missouri. But primarily a lot of the followers, a lot of my network are in Southeast Missouri because that's where I grew up. So for those of our listeners who are not as familiar with you and your company and what you guys do, kind of explain to our listeners what you do for the game of basketball.
Sure, Dave. So we actually just branched off of Platinum Sports Management here in St. Louis, who's been doing baseball for many years. I think most of your listeners will recognize Luke Voigt. He's one of our clients on the baseball side. Shay Simmons as well, who I think most of your listeners will recognize too. So we've been doing the baseball for a long time, and we finally branched off into basketball and coaching just about 2 or 3 months ago. I actually just graduated from St. Louis University Law School with the eye of moving into sports agency as well, basketball and coaching-wise. So it was kind of a nice fit, and with the rise in basketball in St. Louis, I think it was a no-brainer for an agency to come in and kind of try and fill the need of having an agency in town, because obviously the trainers are here. One of the trainers we work with, Corey Frazier, is a nationally known trainer. Actually, I think he just flew to Washington, D.C. last week. So the infrastructure is here. We just kind of tried to round it up, per se, and kind of have a nice, easy schedule of, hey, here's our trainer, here's our strength and conditioning, to make it easy for the athletes. And that way they're not having to fly to Vegas, Houston, North Carolina, et cetera, where a lot of pre-draft training happens. We'd like to keep it centralized in St. Louis, and there's definitely enough talent in St. Louis alone, let alone Missouri, to fill the void, to have 5-10 guys in the NBA here in the next few years. So that's kind of the goal of it all.
Absolutely, and we've seen, you just mentioned a couple of names there. First of all, Shay Simmons, he's a Scott City boy, grew up in Scott City, Missouri, and my younger brother, Toby, who does a lot of the things on Just Win Today with me, Toby struck out batting Shay Simmons in high school, and he'll tell you Shay Simmons threw the best curveball he's ever seen in his life. So our listeners are very familiar with Shay, and then Corey Frazier, Charleston Blue Jay, another Southeast Missouri boy. Corey and I go way back. We've known each other forever and ever, and Corey just a terrific coach. And so you're definitely in there working with good people. And so talk about, some of the things that you guys are doing right now with the players there in St. Louis.
I think basketball-wise, as much as possible, is just making sure, doing what we can. Obviously, until they leave college, they can't, sign with an agent or anything. But basketball is moving towards kind of a similar advisory role as we see in baseball with guys that, you can have an advisor and a consultant more or less that are making sure you're getting the proper training, making sure you're making right decisions on college. Because a lot of kids, big-name colleges, I would say, are attractive to everybody. But sometimes you got to look at playing time, a fit, scheme, and kind of what will showcase your talents best. So a lot of it's just kind of consulting right now. We do have a few players that we're hoping will sign for this coming draft. So knock on wood, a few guys will give us a chance to represent them down the road. But as of right now, kind of building infrastructure-wise, making sure, like I mentioned, our trainers, some of the best in the country, but also our nutritionists, our strength and conditioning, kind of making sure we're set up to where when we do have athletes signed, it's a pretty easy transition. Everything's ready to go, because I think a lot of what people don't know about representing athletes and getting athletes is the pre-draft stuff is almost just as important as the representation themselves. And one of my partners, John Meehan of Platinum Football, he'll tell you, Ezekiel Elliott can be represented by a scarecrow. His talent speaks for itself. The contract he gets, anybody could get him. It's the guys that, are your tweeners, your first, second, third round guys. That's kind of where your negotiating skills come in, but that's also where you need to highlight the pre-draft work to make sure they're eating right. They're becoming more explosive, so on combine day they can actually, train well, score well, and bolster their draft stock that way. So it's kind of there's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes before you can even, a guy steps on the floor for a NBA game.
Absolutely. And, talk about that. You and I, when we first met and we're talking about a lot of these things, is when the Louisville scandal first broke. And there's kind of a behind-the-scenes part of the game that a lot of fans are not aware of, or maybe they're aware of but don't understand completely. And I think you just described part of it, and it gets a bad rap. That part of the game gets a bad rap as far as there's the term handlers and things like that behind the scenes. But in reality, there's so much negotiation and things, and you just hit the nail on the head. Guys are flying to Vegas, they're flying to Chicago, they're flying to other parts of the country to get this advice and to get this training and to get this nutrition to lead through the draft process. And you're talking about everybody that's probably player number 15 through player number 100 in the NBA draft, because they're all either A, jockeying for draft position, or B, just jockeying to be drafted at all. And so those guys do need advice and do need help. And so to have somebody local there that's, who people know to call, that's going to be a big thing for people in that area.
Yeah, and I think, that's our biggest goal is we'd love, and, obviously, I think if we do a good job in the St. Louis area, the recruiting aspect of it, that'll come, and we'll be able to branch out to different cities and states. But I think our focus is to really capitalize St. Louis, make it a centralized place. That way when kids are ready to go to college, ready to sign agents for the NBA, it's a pretty easy call for St. Louis kids. I know if you look at Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, et cetera, St. Louis obviously is already on the map for basketball. So we just kind of want to help facilitate that and have a place, locally where everybody can go. And like you mentioned, the Louisville scandal, I think it's important for parents to have somebody that they can trust and be reliable. Everything we do will be the correct way. You won't find the FBI or anybody coming after us. We're going to do things the right way and build relationships with families. We'd rather do it that way. It's more genuine than handing somebody $100,000, $250,000, $300,000 just to sign with us just because we paid you to. I think a lot of kids and families are now aware that, it is a federal crime, and I don't know that a lot of people knew that. Even with my law degree, it took me a good leap to see what the FBI did there to make it a federal crime. So I think moving forward, you'll see agents level playing field now, even for coaches too, in college now, that have more of a chance to recruit higher class kids and not have to worry about the AAU coach needs to get paid or the family needs a car, et cetera. I think this levels the playing field for everybody. So I think it's great for basketball. It's great for the kids. It lets them pick advisors, agents, trainers based on their talent, their skills, based on relationships rather than money and what we can front you. And I think that really made the business, it's a dirty business, and I think the FBI cleaning up is great, especially for people like us that are growing but still on the small side that want to come into the business and do it the right way.
Absolutely, and you just made a couple of profound points. My brother and I, he and I do a lot of this basketball stuff together on Just Win Today. And we talk all the time about there's a whole industry right now that's using players. They're using players' talent to try to make money. And I think it's great what you guys are doing because it's kind of like you're cutting all that out. And you're saying, basically, here's what we are, or here's who we are, and this is what we do. And instead of, you've got, like in the whole, back to the Louisville, the Auburn, some of these scandals where, there are guys getting paid that, to me, that's not good business because a lot of these guys aren't even going to get drafted. So where's the return on your investment in doing business that way? And then, B, like you said, it's a federal crime. And so, just kind of the shadiness, I think, of all that going away because speaking it just as a basketball coach, somebody who's trying to get this kid to improve. I need this kid to improve because we're trying to win games and I want this player to be as good as he can be. Anybody who's in his ear sending him mixed messages, saying, oh, no, don't listen to your coach. Do it this other way instead because that person has a different kind of interest in that kid. They've already invested money in that kid. instead of the way you're doing it, you guys are all kind of in lockstep. Once the player signs with you, you all want what's best for the player instead of somebody trying to use that player to make a buck, if that makes sense. And so I think that's great what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I think the genuine relationship part is, for us, is definitely the biggest. And, Nick's done a great job with baseball and, great mentor, and John as well as football. And we're all, as an agency as a whole, not just on the basketball side, the coaching side, football, et cetera. I think we're all in lockstep that we want to do things the right way. We build genuine relationships. I think if you ask Shay Simmons and Luke Voigt, Nick does a great job. I think Nick was just at Shay's wedding this past weekend. So that's the kind of agency we want to be, and that's the agency that we strive to be. I think a lot of kids do get swayed by the bigger names, the CAA, et cetera, and all, the glitz and the glam that they can provide. But I think they forget sometimes, too, if you're at LeBron James' agency or Kyrie Irving's agency, you become, you're on the back burner. I think a lot of kids forget that. If you come to a smaller boutique agency like we are, we can give you that personalized treatment. I know John's at every pro day for his clients. I know Nick's at workouts. Some agencies just kind of, you sign with them and you don't see them. So we definitely want to make sure we're involved. We're involved with families, the parents, pretty much lockstep throughout the whole thing. That way they know exactly what we're doing. We know what they're doing as a family. And, I think it'd be great. And like I said, especially in St. Louis, it's needed in St. Louis. There's enough talent here to not have to go to different states and have people calling all the time. And like you said, I think the biggest thing, a lot of people don't realize the amount of strings being pulled by family members, by schools, agents, runners, et cetera. That can take a big toll on the kid, especially, I know if I was 16, 17, to have 5 to 10 people pulling me different directions. It'd be difficult and frustrating, and obviously, won't be able to perform as well because half the time I'm worried about who's calling and which direction are they pulling me. So I think it simplifies everything, and, at the end of the day, everybody wants to get the NBA, and we understand that. But we think the genuine relationship part of it actually helps more than the extra incentives that some agencies had been provided. And like I said, I think the FBI is going to really help clean that up dramatically.
That's right. And as a player, if you do make it, you just don't want any strings attached to you. You don't want to make it and then owe people things. And that's what I've been fortunate to coach, 2 or 3 kids that made it to a professional level as a player, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. And I told those guys, hey, you never owe me a penny. Well, if you make it, you don't owe me anything. But try to make it to where you don't owe anybody else either, because everybody's going to have their hand out. They want to give you something because really what they want is something in return if you make it. And so I think it's great what you guys are doing. And like you said, I think it's important for people that are out there, if they do make it to that level, whether it's a player from like SEMO, we had Antonius Cleveland last year. He's playing with the Warriors G League team right now. There are athletes in the state of Missouri who do get to that level. If they do get to that level, I want them to know that you guys are out there, because you keep referencing Nick. Is Nick Brockmeyer, is he the one that started this agency?
Yeah, so Nick Brockmeyer started the baseball agency side of it. I actually interned with him while I was at SLU Law School, and internship was great. It was great learning baseball. And I came to him a few months ago, and it's something that we had all been talking about. Obviously, the talent in St. Louis isn't, this isn't new. I mean, from the Beals, Tatums, all the way back to Larry Hughes, Jihadi White, et cetera. The talent's always been here. It's just nobody's seemed to ever have tried to not capitalize on it, but nobody's ever seemed to try and put an agency in St. Louis that does, basketball. There's
right.
Football agencies in St. Louis, there's baseball, et cetera, but nobody's tried basketball or coaching for that matter. So for us,
right.
It was, there's no competition in the market in St. Louis. Obviously Chicago, you have big agencies, LA, et cetera, but nobody's doing it in St. Louis. So let's, take a chance at it and see what can happen.
Right. And Nick Brockmeyer, in case our listeners are not aware, he's a graduate of Bell City High School. I coached at Bell City High School, won a couple of state championships there. Nick and I actually grew up playing against each other, so I've known Nick forever and ever also. So the point is, I know Nick personally. I've known him forever. I've got to know Adam, and we have kind of a running joke on this program. You guys are JWT approved. You get the seal of approval. You know, we can vouch for these guys. They're good people, and they're not the dark side of this whole industry that you hear about on ESPN. These are good guys that are trying to do things to help guys get a leg up. If whether you're football, basketball, baseball, there is an agency here in St. Louis if you want to call on those guys. And so, Adam, we appreciate you coming on the program today, and wish you the best of luck, and stay in touch in the future because we're all kind of in this thing for basketball together.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Dave. And like I said, thanks for the endorsement. And I think the biggest thing is kind of spreading the word, but obviously, our actions will speak louder than our words. So we hope to show everybody, once we get a few clients here for basketball, that we do it the right way and it can be done that way.
That's great. Okay, thanks again, Adam.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.